This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
Losing a loved one is one of the most lonely and painful experiences you will go through in life. It can be hard knowing how to pick up the pieces and move forward with your life after. This episode is about how Julie Derks let her husband's death teach her about life and turn this tragedy into something beautiful and meaningful. Julie truly found herself through losing her husband, and it took her on a spiritual path and finding a life of love instead of fear. It led her to finding her passion and purpose in this life, of helping those who are stuck in their grief to find gratitude, joy, and love again for their life. Valeria interviews Julie Derks. She is a mom of 2 amazing boys, and she lost her late husband suddenly in a car accident in November of 2017. At the time, her sons were 2.5 years old and 7 months old. With a simple knock at her door, Julie's whole world was turned upside down, and she lost all bearings to which way was up. In her time of uncertainty, she was certain of one thing, that she would find her way through this, no matter what it took. The first year was awful and messy, with so many downs, way more than ups. But with Julie's 2 boys watching her, she knew they needed to see her save herself. At around the 2-year mark, she had someone ask her to tell them who she was, without giving her typical answer of, "I'm a mom" or widow, and she didn't have a clue how to answer. Julie knew being a widow didn't define her, but she didn't know who she was. She felt lost. This was a huge turning point for her on her healing journey. Julie began to reflect on who she truly was and began to love herself. When Julie lost her husband, she began to have a whole new meaning and appreciation for what life is. She was determined to properly heal herself and do all the work to get her there. It wasn't always easy, and many times Julie wanted to give up. But she is so grateful she kept pushing through. Diving headfirst into your pain doesn't seem natural. Usually we want to bury it, but at some point, that pain is going to come back up again, no matter how deep you buried it. Diving into your pain headfirst is the only way through it. Julie was fortunate to have many different people help guide her on her journey. It's so important to have support when you're going through something so life-changing. No one should have to do that alone. There really is a lack of resources and support for those who are grieving, which is so unfortunate since we're all going to experience death of a loved one at some point in our lives, which is part of why Julie decided to become a grief coach. In the spring of 2021, she dedicated herself to taking a grief coaching course, and she is proudly a certified grief coach from the From Grief to Gratitude Coach Certification Program. Julie's hopes are that she can help just make someone's grief journey a little bit easier by walking with them through their grief and help guide them back into gratitude. She wants to help empower people to open themselves up to grieve naturally, then help shift them to thrive again with their new normal. Meet Julie at inspirationalhealing.ca. Here's the interview with Julie Derks.
In your own words, who is Julie Derks?
Well, it's still an interesting question for me because I think it's forever changing as we grow in life, right? when I lost my husband 4.5 years ago, I didn't know who I was. But I think the crazy thing is that I really didn't even know who I was before he died either. But it was something that I never thought about. And I think it took me tragically losing my husband to really dive into who I was as a person. And it wasn't until I got asked, who are you? And don't say that you're a mom, and don't say that you're a widow. And that's kind of how I had defined myself. So I really had no idea how to answer her. And it really just made me dive into, like, actually, who am I? And it's kind of a loaded question still, because I think I'm just on this journey of love and life, and I've gained so much confidence in who I am as a person, just exploring my passion and purpose in life and helping others. And it's truly just ever changing. And I'm just wake up every day. I'm so grateful for where I am in my life and the love that I now have for myself. I just simply now can honestly say that I love myself, and that's truly who I am. I'm just somebody who's love and who wants to help others in the world who are struggling with grief. So that's kind of how I define myself as, who I am now.
There is video on Facebook. They posted, I think it was long ago. I'm not sure the date. I don't have here, but I saw your children, like you talk about them being a solo parent after losing your husband. And then I looked at them running. I think they were running up close to the ocean. And that made me cry. And I was wondering, I don't know exactly why, but it has to do with that, almost the innocence of children. And it's something that's in all of us, if we really search, like this wonderment about life and not really understanding everything fully, but embracing it anyway and having fun with life in the moment. I'd love to hear from you what it's like to be a solo parent after losing a partner.
It's something I really struggled with for the first year, because I felt like I wasn't fully present, and I really lost the mom who I desired to be and always dreamed of being. And I just couldn't be that for them in that time. And I'm almost grateful that they were so young. They were 7 months old and 2.5 years old when my husband died. And I don't like to say it's a blessing, but in the fact of they had no idea how sad I was. And they had so many people fill their lives. Well, I couldn't fully always be that mom for them. But they really started teaching me about life and about, just keeping push forward. And I decided that I needed to save myself for my children. They needed to watch me save myself. So, if they could see mom pull herself out from, such a tragedy, that was really going to teach them about life and how to be resilient. And, life isn't easy, but we can make the best of it still. And they've really taught me that. And the questions they ask you, because they're trying to understand what's happened too. And it pushed me to actually dive into that journey with them. And, at first I didn't want to answer their questions because it was too painful, but I wanted to be open and honest with them so that, we kind of went through that journey together. And like they just brought out the joys in me. And it took me a while to just want to do things like taking them to the beach. And, it's hard. It was that whole lack of confidence in myself and who I was as a person. So now I just totally embrace, packing up and going to the beach one day and just being in the moment. And they've taught me to just, we all have that child within us, right? And they've really showed me how to embrace that again.
Yes, exactly. That's what I felt. And that it was so profound. I mean, it's still with me, that image. being playful and being able to feel the pain that life can bring us, and then the other side of it, because joy is right there, actually. If we turn, it's almost like a metaphor for walking on, let's say, an empty road, and then instead of looking ahead, only ahead, or straight forward, stopping and looking at the sides of the road to see the flowers, the vegetation, the mountains. So there's so much more to life than just one thing, one feeling, one emotion. That's what it comes to me. That kind of reminded me of my sister. When she divorced, she said something profound, which is kind of similar to what you have said about saving yourself and being present because your children needed you and they were present. She has a child too, my nephew, and she said, he was very young. She said, I have no time to be depressed because of him, because of my son. So I remember that it was a profound lesson that she taught me right there. I think she doesn't know actually about it. I'll talk to her today after this. I love the way you said, you say, I truly found myself through losing my husband, and it took me on a spiritual path and finding a life of love instead of fear. So talk to me for a moment about the spiritual views about yourself and life as of today. What is spirituality to you?
I mean, again, it truly took losing my husband to even think about what life was. What I mean, I was raised Catholic, but it never really resonated with me, and I just had kind of like a knowing when he died that there was so much more to life. There was so much more to what we were experiencing here, and I did dive into some spirituality books, and it's what brought me so much comfort. It brought me answers to, that life is just one big lesson, and we can embrace that, or we can just fall victim to what life is giving us. And as humans, we want answers, and that was one of my biggest things. I wanted answers as to why us, why did this happen to our family? And once I dove into spirituality, I kind of got those answers that there's no person that's special in this world. It's not like I'm the only one that goes through something like this. It's just, this is life, and it's kind of something that it's a choice to make from these experiences that life throws us. And I'm almost became very grateful for what I was able to do with the tragedy. I'm not grateful that my husband died, but I'm grateful for what came about it from the choices that I was able to make, and just knowing that the universe, has my back and I'm not alone, and knowing that there's so much more to life than we truly ever know. And it brings so much comfort knowing that there is a purpose for this. There is, something I can make out of my life from this. And I'm grateful for all those lessons from the death of my husband.
Yeah, that's another powerful message, gratitude. And I wish we could engage in gratitude a lot more and not wait, right, for something tragic to happen, to be grateful. Do you consider gratitude a practice, Julie, or is it a state of mind, of being?
I think it's a practice at first, because I never knew what gratitude meant before. And now it's something I practice every morning. It's the first thing I do when I wake up is I do about 15 minutes of gratitude and just everything I'm truly grateful for in my life. And it's that mindset that sets you up for the rest of your day. And there truly is everything around you to be grateful for.
Yes, I love to hear that, because it is true. When you look around, I know, and I'm sad sometimes, not too often these days, but sometimes I get sad for whatever reason. Relationships are interesting, so they get you sad sometimes. Yeah, yes. I look around, if I'm alone, and I see the plants and everything on the wall, whatever it is, the floors. It's almost like everything is trying to make me smile again. It's interesting it might be just my mind the way it is now works, but I do feel that everything is almost screaming to us to be in the moment and attentive to what is here instead of in the past or future, but present. That has been, I know it has been said a lot. So many people talk about spiritual teachers about staying here now. But wow, what a true message, I feel. I have been practicing that for a while, if it is a practice, and it is a practice in a way. It is incredible. Another question I have for you that I didn't ask was about talking to your children about grief, about their dad, Jason, his name, right, Julie?
Right.
Yeah, how did you convey that message to them? How did they understand, or how did that land? I'd love to hear more about it.
So for my oldest, who was 2.5, he obviously knew that dad was no longer around, but didn't understand why. And it was definitely a process for him to understand. And it was to me felt like the strangest thing, but I think it was truly meant to be. How we were just out for a walk one day, and there happened to be a dead bird on the road. And he said, "Mommy, what's wrong with that bird?" And I said, "Well, honey, that bird must have got hit by a car and it died." And he goes, "Oh, just like Daddy," because he had heard me say, Daddy died. But to him, what does death mean? And we had talked about, how his soul is in heaven and he is still around us. And he heard all those things, but him seeing that bird on the road dead kind of was a connection for him of what death meant. And that's, nature is, again, so amazing. Nature's all around us, and it's how I tell others to teach their children about death. It's just simply around nature. I mean, you have trees die, flowers die, everything in life dies, right? And just taking nature, it was really powerful for him, and that's really the moment that clicked for him. And for my youngest, just because he was still a baby, he didn't know any different of having dad around, other than there was pictures of him. But he did once, have a complete meltdown because all of a sudden he just wanted Daddy here. And it took, again, just explaining to him that Daddy's all around us. And I do this visual with them where I hold up a blanket and I said, "You can't see Mommy, but I'm here." And that's kind of like what Daddy is for that. You is he can hear you. He's around us. He's just not, we just can't physically see him. So that's really helped them out a lot, knowing that their dad is still around them and they can talk to him. And I kind of let them say, it's kind of their superpower that dad can go anywhere with them. And because I know it kind of saddens them at times that, other friends have their dads and they don't. So I just remind them that, your dad's always with you and you can always talk to dad. And I think just visuals for kids is so important because it is such a hard concept to understand.
True. Wow, that's beautiful, Julie. Very creative. As we talked off record about creativity coming from that place of love and freedom within. Yeah, I can see that. I love the way you kind of building these concepts and creative ways of explaining children and adults, right, about grief and how to navigate this type of reality. So with that in mind, I do like to ask this question to you about death too. One of your Facebook posts, you say grief seems to be one of the hardest things to talk about for most people. Why is that? Have you found an answer?
I think it's mainly because people are so afraid of death and they don't want to face reality that, we are all going to die. It's one of the only guarantees we have in life is that it's going to end. And that's brings in a lot of fear for people. But for me, I don't want to die tomorrow or anything like that. I want to live a long, healthy life. But why be afraid of something that is all going to come to us? Why not learn more about it so that it can bring you comfort and, prepare for it? And that's just simply living your life fullest every single day because we aren't guaranteed tomorrow. And having those conversations with your spouse, with your children, with your family about, what would happen if you did die tomorrow, because it's something me and my husband never had was a conversation about, what if you died tomorrow? What would we do? What would happen? Which is if you're prepared, you can never completely prepare for losing a loved one, but you can have those conversations that can bring in a lot of comfort. And it's one of the, like I said, guarantees of life. So it's a society so avoidant with it. And I think people don't like to talk to you. Like, I know I felt so alienated once my husband died, because it reminded people of what can happen. And I learned that was not a reflection of me. It was a reflection of them and how they felt about death. But it's truly unfortunate that so many people are just so uncomfortable with it that they can't even talk about it, or, see someone whose life has been altered because of it.
It is sad to hear that. I love your message, though, and I love how you talk about and you're making the subject of grief and death kind of very light and very, I have to say, beautiful, because I see beauty in the way you deliver the message, you communicate the message, and very creative. And that's what it is. I see beauty in creativity as I see beauty in nature. Everything it does is just, I know it will die, a flower will die, but it's beautiful anyway. It shows up anyway. And about fear, that's true. So we are afraid, or most of us are afraid to die. But then knowing that we never die, in the sense of the soul, the spirit of who we really are, then that would make such a huge difference. And I wonder why so many people don't know who they are. Or it's almost like being afraid of finding out that their essence is ever present and never goes anywhere. Is that something that for you has become a belief system, or something that you know?
Yeah, I like I said, it was like my soul awakened when my husband died. And it was just a knowing that there was so much more to death than just simply a person being gone from their body, right? And, it came quickly to me with signs from my husband that he was still with us. And it truly is now. I know that, when we do die, there's such more beauty to where we go, and we're truly never gone. It's just, you're not physically in your body here anymore.
I love that has become for you this inner knowing, right? There's this truth, right, Julie? It's a kind of truth that's really hard to explain. We put it into words, but most people don't understand. It takes experience, it seems to me, although it's not an experience. Or would you say it is? Because, I know I have talked to so many people who have talked and communicated with loved ones who have passed, and they are psychics and they are intuitives, healers. So they see a lot of the invisible spiritual realm around them. So, and I also wonder why so many of us don't have that experience, because that would help.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that it sometimes does take a tragedy. Some of the people who have made the most profound changes in their lives have had some sort of tragedy happen, and not that it's a blessing, but I'm grateful for the awakening to, at my age, have this all the rest of my life, hopefully to keep living this and spreading this great message for people who don't have to go through a tragic event and can just learn from others that have experienced a tragic event. Because I think that's the other way that you can learn, is just resonating with somebody who's gone through a tragedy and what they speak in words, and learning from those people.
There is almost a kind of transmission that is passed. Yeah, I do know that, the power of that. So talk to me about the work you do as a certified grief coach. Do you meet your clients online, offline, groups?
Yeah, so I kind of created the 12-week program, and I call it Rising from Your Ashes of Your Grief, because truly that's what grief does to you. It crumbles you to the very ashes, right? You're just crumbled pieces, and you truly can rise from those ashes, and make something of yourself in your life. But it's a process, and I kind of took the steps I took in my life and journey for this last 4.5 years and put it into a program to help teach other widows who are going through the same thing that I went through, because you do feel lost. And unfortunately, there isn't, a lot of resources out there. And I like to do group programs with my widows because it is a very lonely journey. And the connection of other widows together is very empowering. And it's just teaching them how to truly sit with your emotions, feel them all. Like you can't run from them, because they will come back. And the longer you run from them, the longer your grief is going to stay with you, and you're going to stay stuck. And it's just, so it's a process of teaching them those tools that they can work through their grief, and then just trying to find your identity after losing a spouse.
So that's another component of healing grief, which I have a question for you about that, actually. It's finding a new identity. And that's interesting how we get so fixed with identities, right, Julie? And then we believe that we are just a mom, or just a podcaster, or just a wife. And then there's so much more that we are or could be. So, when it comes to healing, from the perspective of grief, what is healing to you?
Healing to me is grief actually has really a way of bringing up all your limiting beliefs about yourself that you might have carried your whole life. You just truly didn't have to deal with them. But when you start sitting in your pain, all these things come up about yourself, and the limiting beliefs came up for me. So healing was really, truly working on those, and just learning to love myself. It was a process, but, I lived my life so much in fear. Even with my husband, I truly was in a state of fear the whole time. So healing for me was learning to actually be in a place of love for everything. Love for myself, love for others. There's really only two mindsets, fear or love. And healing was eventually getting to being in that state of love. I mean, it's a practice again. There's times where fear comes in, and we're human, right? Fear comes in all the time. But when I practice love, and I know the love's out there, and when you see the flow of life when you're in the state of love, and it's a beautiful thing. So healing was when I could quickly get out of the fear and go back into that love. And that's, when I truly, we're forever healing, really, right? It's never an ending journey. But for me, it was finally getting to knowing that, I can be in a state of love, and I don't have to stay stuck in the fear.
Oh, I love that. So that it's the awareness, the knowing that you can go back to love. It's almost like having the road map, right, Julie, to love. I do believe that too. There's no destinations when it comes to anything, in a sense. So it's that knowing, being aware of how to go back to that place that leaves us with that sense of peace. It comes from peace, joy too, of course. But peace, it seems like joy arises from inner peace. That's what it has been my experience too.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be the same for balance. I often talk here about balance, if there's a destination for balance, being balanced finally. We always talk about it, and in the end, it's all about accepting being out of balance and then knowing how to go back to balance. So I kind of think about that when I think about healing and love and fear, as you say. How do you define love? Do you have words for it?
It's just when you're not, when you just know everything is flowing, you're trusting the universe, trusting, it's just letting go and letting God, knowing that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. There's no getting to anywhere, because you're just trusting in the flow of life.
Another question I have about grief is the misconceptions. What are some of the misconceptions and misunderstandings about grief?
I think people just want to fix somebody who's grieving, but it's not truly something you can fix. It's a process. It takes time. And something I like to say is, the mourning process takes at least a year, because you have to go through all those firsts. And those firsts are so difficult to go through. So it's really just people need time to grieve. And there's also the misconception that, once they're over, which we never truly get over, but once you're beyond the deep pain of grief, that you're going to be back to this person that you were before. But grief, losing someone you love, forever changes you, and there is no getting back to who you were before. And I know family and friends just want to fix you, but there is no putting a Band-Aid over it. It's not a disease. It's not an illness. It's something that we experience as humans. And it's just truly embracing what grief is and allowing the process to happen.
Another question I have for you is an open question about what do you feel is the purpose of being here? This is a question I love asking, and I have to ask you.
I think it's seeing for what lessons life is giving you. Like, everything can be a lesson to teach you about yourself, to teach you about life in general. And it's seeing those, it's just growing. I mean, if you take those lessons life gives you, you grow and embrace it. And that's, I think, our experiences here is just to embrace the lessons life gives us and to grow our soul. I mean, I believe we come in here basically to learn lessons. And our soul just wants to learn these lessons to grow. So I now see, the death of my husband was a lesson that my soul wanted to learn this lifetime. And I chose to embrace that because if that's what was meant for me in this lifetime, that's what I'm going to choose to do.
So many people don't have a sense of purpose and meaning too, and that's why some of the saddest tragedies that I can think of happen, suicide, especially among young people. So what would you say to somebody who's trying to look for that meaning and purpose and cannot find it?
Yeah, I think for one that there's too much pressure around the word purpose. Like, it's something that you have to find, and if you don't, then you failed. And I truly felt that before. I had no idea. I was just living, being a mom, and didn't know anything else than being the mom. So it was just exploring. Once I learned to find out who I was and learn about spirituality and life, it's just finding your purpose can simply just be finding what you love and being in joy. My purpose is my joy. My joy is helping others who have experienced a loss get through it. So it's kind of intertwined with your joy. And if we kind of need to take away the pressure of finding your purpose, because it can also be ever changing. Maybe my life can still take me down another road, and I might not be always being a grief coach. Who knows? But right now, that's my joy, and that's what I love doing. So, I guess that's why I call it my purpose.
We're almost at the end, but I do have something else that I read on one of your Facebook posts. The paraphrasing you, unhelpful help after losing someone. So basically, you talk about toxic positivity, which I never heard about this. So I would love for you to talk to me about unhelpful comments. You mentioned so many of them. And then what would a helpful comment look like when dealing or meeting somebody who is going through grief?
I think the toxic positivity is just telling somebody that, that your loved one would want you to be happy, that your loved one would want you to move on with your life, that, you should be back into some joy, just telling them how they should be, because that just puts so much pressure on the griever that they're doing it wrong, that they should be over it by now. So I think that's people just, again, it's that fix. But really all people need to do is just put some empathy into it. And, I know it's hard to know exactly what somebody's going through when they lose somebody, but we can all sit just for a minute and visualize what it would be like to lose somebody that we love, and then put that empathy towards them, and knowing that I don't know exactly what you're going through. I can only imagine it, because it's truly all you can do. But just imagine that and think of what you would want. And it's just having someone sit with you and listen to what you need to say without any judgment. And then just simply, the biggest things for me was somebody saying, I'm going to go grab groceries for you this week, or I'm going to cook you. I have meals cooked for me. It's just those little gestures that can lighten the load of someone who's grieving. It's not even needing always to say something. And you can simply even say, I have no idea what to say to you, but my heart breaks for you and I'm here for you. Just simply being there for somebody is really the biggest gift you can give them.
I can only imagine, because I have not been through grief. So yeah, it resonates very much true to me, Julie. Being there I would want that, yeah, to talk about it, because I love to talk. And then, as you can tell, and then also, yeah, having someone that could do those little things like, yeah, something simple, being around me, eating together, going, yeah, that would make such a huge difference. Did you have those people around you, those supportive people?
I did have, it wasn't huge, but I did have that small community of friends and family that were very supportive and were there for me. And I have, found friends through my journey that have truly been there for me too. And it is the biggest gift that you can have, is having just a few friends that would literally drop anything to come be with you and sit with you and help you through those hard times.
Something that came to me is by reading your posts about unhelpful ways and helpful ways. There is only one way to grieve, your way. Would that make sense?
Yes, there's no rule book to grief, and everybody's going to grieve differently. Even if you lost a sibling that you had other siblings with, they're all going to grieve that sibling differently, because your relationship with that person who died was unique to you. So your grief is unique to you. Many people grieved my husband, but no one was going to grieve him the same way I did, because my relationship with him was different than everybody else's. And so we can't expect anyone to grieve the same way. But there's an understanding between people who do lose somebody. And that's all there really is just that understanding and knowing that we may not exactly know how they're grieving, but you can show up for each other.
Another question that comes to mind is about unhealthy grief. Is there such a thing, Julie, in a case of trying to suppress emotions and drinking and doing something else to hide them?
Yeah, I think it's just when you're hiding from your pain, you're avoiding it at all costs and just really trying to even not think about your loved one who's died, pretend that it didn't happen. That leads to those, unhealthy coping mechanisms like drinking and drugs and all that unhealthy ways. And even, there's just simply the avoiding, which we all do, right? But it's just giving yourself grace that you can't. It's a process to learn how to deal with the pain, and it's not easy for so long. And I was really good at avoiding my pain for quite some time by just binge watching TV shows or making sure that I wasn't alone because it was too painful. But it's just giving myself that grace and knowing that it was a process. And as long as you eventually know that you can't continue that way and you have to start truly feeling what your body's telling you.
So it's not a wrong way to do it, but it is unhealthy from the perspective of the body and mind, right? Because it's causing more suffering on top of suffering. I noticed that my husband, he did that. I was not in his life at the time, but when he lost his sister, he did lots of crazy things, per se. But that was the only way he could really deal with the pain. He didn't know any other way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting to see that, holding that statement true, that there is only one way to grieve, your way. So even that, it's okay too, right, Julie? If somebody, we are here to support those people. You are there to support them if they come to you, but I know you would not judge them as being wrong.
No, there is no judgment. It's just an understanding and knowing that you need to give yourself grace in this journey because it's a difficult one.
Yeah, I have not been through it, but I have a glimpse through my husband, and he still feels that to this day. It has been, I think, 30 years now. So it's interesting to see. Every time we talk about his sister, he cries.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like it's still unprocessed. Maybe he needs to see you. I'll talk to him. Oh, my God. Thank you so much, Julie, for doing what you do, for kind of bringing light and playfulness also to this very painful subject. I love the videos on Facebook. It made me laugh many times. It made me feel profoundly too. So thank you so much for coming from this creative place that I call love. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a true honor.
Before we say goodbye, I do have a few more questions for you, the ending questions. Let me see which ones to ask. I'll ask you this one that I usually ask everyone. What 3 experiences you wish everyone to have before they lose the body, before they die?
Experiencing joy, it's just experiencing love for themselves and just learning to live in the moment.
Wow. Yeah. 3 powerful lighthouse. Thank you so much. And before we say goodbye, where can we find more information about you, your work, services, and future projects?
So I have a website that kind of has both. You can link to my Instagram and my Facebook. It's inspirationalhealing.ca. And then you can find me on Instagram through both the website, and I think my username is Julie Derks _grief coach if you want to find me on Instagram. And then I also have my inspirational healing page on Facebook.
Wonderful. I love the name too. I'll have the link on your podcast profile. And I love that name. I forgot to mention inspirational healing. When I saw that phrase, it really caught my attention in a sense of heart connection to those words. Thank you so much again, Julie, for your presence here today, and we'll talk soon. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Julie Derks and her work, please visit inspirationalhealing.ca.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.